Again, my name is Jim Howell. I think you all know me, pretty sure. Everybody knows who I am, I think. And I'm County Commissioner for District 5. District 5 includes all the land up from Kellogg all the way to the county line inside the center of the far end of Mulvane, and then goes from essentially the river east to 159th Street East, which is the county line on the east side. And great, thank you for being here this evening. I hope we have a good discussion. What we're going to do tonight is I'm going to reserve a few topics for myself here in a few minutes. But before we even get to that, I've asked Deanna Aspedon. She's our county appraiser. She started this year, technically in that key position. She started technically on January the 1st of this year. That was her start date this year. January 1 of 2026 was her start date. Bear in mind, though, she's been in the office for a number of years. She's very skilled. She's worked in a number of different parts in that office, and she knows a lot about appraisals. And so today, let me just make a couple of points. You're welcome to correct me if I say something wrong. The county operates the county appraiser's office, which is, in my opinion, an unfunded mandate from the state of Kansas. They tell us we have to do that. It's one of 16 unfunded mandates. And we have to make it a choice on how many appraisers to hire. You have around 70 or so appraisers, right? Around 70 or so appraisers. We buy them all the equipment and software and the things they need to do their job. But we don't tell them how to do their job. How they do their job, they have to follow 3 documents: the Constitution of the state of Kansas, the laws of the state of Kansas, and rules and regulations from the Property Valuation Division, which is a sub-agency of the Department of Revenue, Kansas Department of Revenue. So those are 3 documents that define exactly what they do and how they do it. And there's a lot of statistical monitoring of her office to make sure they are in statistical compliance. And so we don't have any way to change how we do appraisals. Appraisals is something that's not a county commissioner issue directly. We try to learn about it, and we try to talk about it, but it's not something we have control over. So, Deanna, welcome to correct me if I'm wrong, but thank you for being here this evening.
You're welcome.
What have I said wrong so far?
You have said nothing wrong so far.
All right. Can you please, you brought us a handout. I know that there's some slides, like a PowerPoint slide. You can walk us through that or talk to us. Well, I was just saying, I want her to explain to us all how are property valuations done, and give us a chance to understand that more deeply. Then we'll have some Q&A. If you want to talk about her world and how anything we want to understand more deeply, we'll have some questions for her as well. And then I told her she could try to leave here at 7 o'clock. So we'll only have her for about 30 minutes, and I'm going to send her home. So, Deanna, it's all yours.
So I'm going to talk very fast. I am Deanna Aspedon. I'm the Sedgwick County Appraiser, as Commissioner Howell had just told you. I've been in the office for over 28 years in different various areas in the office. But yes, I have just been appointed the county appraiser the first of the year. So I did give you a handout. I did ask Commissioner Howell to give me a little guidance on what he would like me to talk to you about. And when you look at, and I put 2 slides per page. This is a slide presentation, but I chose to go ahead and just print it out for you to look at. And stop me at any time if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer them. So slide number 2 on page number 1, I just wanted to give you an idea that mass appraisal and fee appraisal, which a lot of you may be more familiar with fee appraisal, they serve different purposes, but they are based on the same fundamental appraisal principles. So when you look at our core methodologies, both of our approaches, fee and mass appraisal, rely on the same 3 national recognized valuation techniques, which is the sales comparable approach, the cost approach, and the income approach. I will get into that a little bit later in the next few slides to explain each one of those approaches. Also, we both are required to have an effective date. So, but mass appraisal, our effective date is always January 1 of each year. A fee appraisal effective date, when they're doing their appraisal, is when they actually physically inspect the property for when they're doing their appraisal. Both of them are market driven. We're both looking at trends and the local supply and demand and physical characteristics of the property to help us to establish the opinion and values. And we both are required to follow professional standards that are set forth by the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. That is the similarities. The differences, though, on slide number 3, which is on page number 2 at the top, you will see that there are different reasons and we have different scopes why we actually perform our appraisals. So a fee appraisal, as I kind of alluded to before, it actually focuses on evaluating a single specific property for a specific client. A mass appraisal, on the other hand, we value thousands of properties. We actually have over 239,000 parcels in Sedgwick County right now that we're responsible for valuing. So we use statistical models to ensure that we are, and our charges, Commissioner Howell had stated previously that we follow state statutes and we follow the Constitution. And in that, we were required to perform our evaluations so that we are uniform and equally dividing up the end all taxation, because the appraised value that we set forth is part of the property tax formula. So our charge is to make sure that we're being uniform and equal, so the distribution of taxes is across the board with all these property owners in Sedgwick County. The use case fee appraisals, as some of you know, typically are performed for mortgages, lending purposes, or there are times that some are performed for tax appeals. Mass appraisal, on the other hand, we just talked about that, is helped to calculate the local property taxes, because property taxes, I didn't put the formula in here, and I don't know if you're aware of it, but they take the overall total budget for the county, and that's adding all the jurisdictions together, the fire districts, the schools, the county, and such, and all of those budgets are added together, and then it's divided by the assessed value. And the Constitution has, each classification has their own assessment percentage. So they take the appraised value times all those percentages to come up with the assessed value. So you take the total budget divided by the assessed value, and that comes up with what your mill levy is to determine what your taxes are. There is another major difference, and that is the fact that fee appraisers actually physically inspect the interior of the properties, where mass appraisal does not. We do all of our inspections from the outside, with a few exceptions. Those exceptions are when the property is being newly constructed. We occasionally will be inside of those properties to be able to determine what the physical characteristics are at the time of the construction. The other time is when a property owner requests that we come into the property. Sometimes there is a need for us to come into the property because there's excessive deferred maintenance or some structural issue that is going on with the property, and we cannot tell that from the outside. So if you have any properties like that, you do not have to wait for an appeal to let us know that. You can call our office at any time, and we will come out and do a field inspection, and we will come in and do an interior inspection. If you do have such issues, we would like to know that, because we're not going to be able to tell from the outside. I hope that makes sense to everybody, and you don't have to wait for an appeal. Please let us know, and we will make a field check, and we'll come out and take a look at it. but we will not come inside the property. We have a form we actually fill out that you're giving us authorization to come into the property. So you will fill out a form and you will sign and say, it is okay for our appraiser to come inside your property and your improvements, yes.
Let me ask you a question. First of all, there was a property taxes 101 flyer on the table, if you didn't see that, because my eyes started to glaze over because it's so technical. I understand it really well, but it might be like, what was that she said about it? Anyway, this explains it really well, how they're calculated. But the second thing I wanted to point out is, let's say someone puts their house on the market and there's real estate photos of all the beautiful things about the home. Do you guys ever see those photos?
We sometimes see those photos, and we will take into account that they're into what the condition of the property is in reference to those photos. So yes, if we have access to the photos when the property sells, we will take into account what is going on in those photos.
And they might say, on the real estate photos, full basement, newly remodeled, new kitchen, granite countertops, new windows, and you talk about all the really updates and stuff to the home. I suppose that becomes public data at that point because it's out there. I don't know how you can not necessarily consider those things if that's being thrown at you, so to speak. But
right.
So I guess if you don't want the appraiser to know, then don't leave your photos on Zillow.
So there's the three approaches I previously spoke about with the sales comparable approach. It is based on market sales of similar properties and data characteristics. The cost approach is based on a land value plus a depreciation cost of improvements. I will allude to this before I go any further, and I should have said this previously, but all of our three approaches that both the fee appraisers and the mass appraisers use, all use sales as part of those valuation methods. I know the sales comparable approach is blatant that you see that sales are a part of it, but in cost, it also is a part of it because it plays in the part on the depreciation. We're using all of the sales in the county, and we're looking at what they're selling on per the condition and the age of the homes. And we're using that factor to reduce the replacement cost of the improvements. And because that's showing that the market is reflecting X is what it's selling for. So we're using that amount to reduce the value of the replacement cost of the improvement. It's also used in the income approach, using as part of the cap rate, which I'm going to show that in just a minute, a little more spelled out per each one. So
and income is primarily for commercial properties.
It
however.
is. It is.
So residential, that's not one of your options really, okay?
So in the next page on slide number 5, it goes into the sales comparable approach more in depthly. Shows that we're looking at invalidating property sales. We're doing analysis on market trends and buyer behavior, looking at valuation models and market data, and applying models consistently to similar properties. And Commissioner Howell was just talking about this. Is commonly used sales comparable approach is used in residential properties, vacant land, and commercial properties. Where the cost approach, and we kind of talked about that, the replacement cost, we're using Marshall and Swift. You may not know it, but your insurance company and your mortgage companies are using Marshall and Swift too to come up with the replacement cost of the improvement. And then we're applying a depreciation using the sales to determine this factor and taking into account age and condition. We combine the land value and the improved value to come up with a cost value. This is used in new construction, commercial, industrial properties, special use properties, unique properties, and that have limited sales. And then the income approach, I'm probably not going to go into that in depthly, but if you have a business or whatever, it's mainly for commercial, used for office buildings, retail properties, apartment complexes, industrial facilities. And the cap rate is where we use the sales. We use a market-driven cap rate to come up with the income approach. So we do reconcile these approaches. We're determining what the best that produce the consistent and defensible market values for all the properties within the jurisdiction. So we're testing our models for accuracy and uniformity. We use a lot of statistics in our business, and that, I think, causes a lot of frustration for the most common property owner, because unless you're a statistician, you are talking Greek to me, and this doesn't make sense. But we use a lot of stats to be able to make sure that we are in compliance and we are treating everybody in fair and equal. And Commissioner Howell, that's where I'm finding the most frustration, because if you've talked to an economist or a statistician, they talk at a very high level, and we are using that kind of information mathematically to actually test our models. And that's the only way that we can do it in reference, because of 239,000 parcels we're responsible for looking at, is to use those certain stats. We're looking at coefficient of dispersion. And I don't know, do we have any statisticians in here? Normally I do not. And that's where it's creating
I'm not a
havoc.
statistician, but I know what that means. But yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
and it is a large formula to come up with that. We're figuring the standard deviations and the confidence intervals to see where everything lies, and making sure we're fairly and uniformly, equally.
And part of the oversight from PVD
Yeah.
is that type of oversight. They're looking at our data compared to sales data or whatever to ensure that we are in compliance. Relevant. In fact, one of the studies is a sales ratio study that's done by the state every year, and they have to stay within a percentage of sales, otherwise they get dinged by the state. And so they've got to they're statistically verified that we're staying within a percentage of actual sales. Am I saying that right?
Right, and we have to be within 90 to 110. So 100 would be that we are spot on with the sales price. So we can either be 10% below or 10% above. If we're not staying in compliance with that, we will get dinged in reference to our compliance. The COD, which is that the coefficient of dispersion, is another thing that they're looking at, and that's telling how accurate, how close our data is consistent with each other. So, and also what they call a price-related differential, which is telling us whether or not we are overvaluing or undervaluing higher price properties versus overvaluing or undervaluing lower price properties. So yes, we spend a lot of time running statistics to make sure, and testing our information to make sure that we are being uniform and consistent with our data.
Very good. And again, so it's a combination between you providing that data, but the state requires the data, and they also have an opinion about our data being acceptable or not acceptable. So they usually weigh in every year on that.
They do.
Okay.
I have a report that the Board of County Commissioners also get that shows whether or not I am in compliance with every set standards that they have. So looking on page number 5 on slide number 9, I just want to let you know that there is a tax valuation appeal process. And there are 2 primary processes. You have to start with an informal appeal. And you have to start with the appraiser's office doing an informal appeal. And it's exactly what it's saying, informal. Informal means that you're coming in, or we're calling you, however you choose to do that, we'll either call you or you will come in for an appointment. You'll sit down with the appraiser, and the appraiser will go all over your data characteristics to make sure your data is correct. And then they will explain how we valued. And then they will ask if you have any questions or if there's any information we're unaware of. Because as I alluded to earlier, we cannot get inside of your property unless you request that we come in, or we see some sales photos, or we were in there during new constructions. So we may not know that your house is extremely outdated, or there's structural issues with it. There's a issue in the foundation and your basement is leaking. We may not know that from the outside. So that is good information for you to bring in if there's excessive deferred maintenance or it's greatly outdated. We want to know that. Again, as Commissioner Howell said, you probably don't want to tell me that you just remodeled your basement and you have basement finish that we did not have picked up. I'm not telling you to lie to me because I don't want you to lie to us. But again, that's not what you're wanting to do in reference to that. And typically, you want to tell us if there's something wrong with your property that we can't see from the outside. The informal appeal process is in the spring after you receive your value notice. Now, this year, we mailed out all value notices. We are not required to mail out all value notices. Typically, in the past, for the probably past 7 years or so, we only mailed out value notices if there's a classification change or a valuation change. This year, I decided that I was going to just start from scratch and we were going to mail out all value notices. So everyone should have received their value notice, but it is also online too. If you miss that spring opportunity when the value notices are set, so our values are, we value January 1st of each year. We kind of talked about that earlier. But value notices are mailed out always around March 1st. So March 1st, you have 30 days to request an informal appeal with our office. Your value notice comes out, and it looks like this. I printed a generic one that doesn't have anybody's address on there. But on the back side of the value notice, it gives you instructions for which you do have to sign it, and you send this back to our office, and you will be set up for an informal appeal. But if you miss that window, you still have the opportunity to do a payment under protest. And there, of course, you can pay all of your property taxes when they come out at the end of the year. But you can also pay first half. So you have to at least pay the first half of your taxes to get in what they call a payment under protest. And when you do that payment under protest, you can do it in December. Typically, they're going to set you up within the next couple of months. And I believe I brought that too. It's a little hard to find. I think it's easier on my page, on the appraiser's office webpage, because you'll just click on appeals and it'll take you right there. But the treasurer's office is where you're going to send this payment under protest in, and you have to pay your first half. If you pay it through your mortgage, you still can do that. You just have to fill out the form and you have to submit it to the treasurer's office. This is also on the treasurer's office website too. I believe it's a little bit deeper to get to. But if you call the call center, 660-9000, they will walk you through where to get this form out and how to fill it out. You can also call our office, even though it's not really our form, the treasurer's form, office form. They actually receive this. They verify that you paid at least half of your taxes, and then they submit it to the appraiser's office. We set you up for an appeal.
A couple of things there. So the property valuation that's sent out in January, from the January 1st value, that's sent out March the 1st. That's what you're using that value to come up with a tax bill for your home that's mailed out to you in December. So that December payment is based on the updated value to your property. That's the timeline. If someone did make an appeal and they didn't get an adjustment, or they're still not happy about their valuation, can they still fill out a payment under protest? If they did have an appeal, they did appear, they're just not happy with the results of that, can they do a PUP?
So if you did an informal appeal in spring and you requested one and we scheduled it, you cannot have another informal appeal. You have to go through the process. I have this later in my slides, what the process is. You can only get into the appeal process one time, but you have multiple opportunities. You either get in the spring when the value notice goes out or when you pay your taxes, and you can do it on your first half or your second half. If you do get an adjustment from a payment under protest, and let's just say you paid your first half, if you got an adjustment, it would reduce your second half. If you paid all of your taxes in December, then they would just give you a refund after the decision was made to lower your value.
They would actually send you a check?
Yeah, they would.
I thought they were going to credit, but I'd like to check.
Well, they'll
better.
credit you if you paid the first half. They'll credit you on the second half. But if you paid all of them, because some people do, they pay all of them in December, or you chose, for some reason you didn't get in December when you paid your first half, you waited until May when you paid your second half, you can still get into the payment under protest in May when you pay your second half.
If they did not ask for an appeal for the spring and they didn't miss it because they didn't ask for it, can they still do a PUP at that point, even though they didn't ask for an appeal earlier?
Yes, if you did not get in the spring in the informal, because you did not ask for it, you can do a payment under protest, either your first half or your second half.
And what that'll do, that'll schedule, if you will, another informal appeal. If they successfully file a PUP, they'll get an informal appeal scheduled, even though it's not in the normal spring time frame. It'll happen some other time of the year.
Yes.
Okay. That's good to know that. Let's go ahead and do a little Q&A here. I know you want to leave in a few minutes, and I know that we have a couple questions. Kathy.
I just want to say, first of all, my husband wanted to be here, but he's on another state board, and it's really late, so I may not have the exactly accurate information. But my question is, he has a business, the same type of business, so this will Cateville. He has his on North Broadway, or north of Hayesville, and a business sold that was south of Hayesville, same type of business, bigger footprint as what he sold. He did a protest and went and talked to them, and then they came out and looked at the business. He showed the sale of the other property. Per square foot was much less than what they were valuing it at. And all he did, he felt like everything went well, and then he gets something in the mail saying that they didn't lower anything. And I'm just like, how can that be? Or how do you find out why that is? Or
There would have been a reason on your result letter, which I did bring that to you. So you'll get a result letter for your appeal. And on the back of the result letter gives you instructions if you still disagree with it, whether we lowered it, because we might lower your value, but you may still not be in agreement with how we lowered it, or we didn't lower it at all, or we didn't lower it at all. But there is a reason code on there why it was not lowered or whatever. So my recommendation, unfortunately, I don't know that there is a date on the bottom of this letter. The state requires a 30-day. Everything seems like 30 days, right? So you have a 30-day window to go to the next level. And my recommendation is if you don't get satisfactory at the informal level, we have certain guidelines we have to follow, but they're not exactly the same as the next level up. So the next level up has a different latitude. And you may get a result there that you're satisfied with. And I don't want to ignore it, and it's extremely small, and I apologize for that. But on slide number 13, it shows how the appeal process works. But I highly recommend, if you go to the informal level and you're not satisfied with what we are able to do at the informal level, then I highly recommend to go to the next level. The next level, depending on the valuation, some businesses, if it's 3 million or less, you can go to what they call the small claims division of BOTA, the Board of Tax Appeals. It too seems informal, but the appeal officer is a state hired appeal officer, and they're the ones that are going to make a decision. Granted, we will have a representative from our office at that appeal too, to give them the information from our office, but it is not our office making that decision. If it's 3 million or more, then you automatically have to go to the Board of Tax Appeals. It seems a little more formal. It's not as formal as you're not required to have an attorney at that level. Some people do. Sometimes we do take, for businesses, commercial, a lot of times we are taking our county attorney with us. And classification as ag. I don't know if anybody has any ag land in here, but if it is an ag reason that you're appealing, then you have to go to the Board of Tax Appeals. You can't go to that small claims. So I'm not sure what your letter says on the bottom of the mail date, but I highly recommend that you go to the next level. They have a little more latitude to make changes where we don't, the guidelines that we have. And we're providing you during that informal, we're listening to what you have to say. We're also should be providing you how we valued it. We're to make sure our data characteristics are right. But I'll be honest with you, you're not always going to agree with what we're able to do. And I don't want to hold anybody back. That's why there's multiple levels. You actually, after that is the Kansas Court of Appeals. That's more formal. You might want to consider a legal counsel then in the Kansas Supreme Court. Most of those residential usually stops with the regular board, but there are some commercial because of what the complexity of it and how it's set fares ends up going to the Kansas Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court. And again, I just recommend that you take a lawyer when you get up to past the board. Not a requirement, but and we don't set any of those up. Once you go past our informal level, we're not even scheduling it. The state schedules it. They're going to schedule it with you. The state's going to send out the result at the Board of Taxpayer level. And we're just there to represent the office and give the information that we have. I know that sounds like a generic answer to you, but that's where we're at on that. Does that make sense? After we make a decision, we can't reverse our decision. And that's why I recommend to go to the next level. They do have a different mindset, and they have different guidelines than we do. And they may be able to give you relief that we cannot do. And we're not trying to be misleading when you come in. We may be very neutral when you're coming in because we're actually trying to get facts and we're trying to provide you facts. And then we do research afterwards. And if you've submitted any documentation, we're looking at that and then we're making a decision. Does that help? Kind of.
I think he's a sole proprietor too, so it's hard to go to a different we done this because I didn't want to come in, Jay.
Are there any other quick questions? Because I would like to let Deanna go soon. Go ahead, Donna.
When you had someone come to a field inspection, is there a fee for that or is that? Say that again? Is there a fee if the owner wants you to come in and inspect?
No, there is no fee, absolutely not. We are required every 6 years to do a physical inspection. You may not see us because we don't make an appointment at that time. So if it is in that, what we call our re-inspection, we may not even get out of the vehicle if we don't have questions, because we're digitally reviewing the property ahead of time to save us some time and taxpayer money, because we used to go door to door and walk around when I started in 1998. But to save some money, we do it digitally, but there are some things we can't see digitally. Our flights are leaves off if possible, meaning there aren't any leaves on the trees when they take that flight. But there are a lot of times we can't see what's going on in the backside. And if when we come during that time, we will do what we have slated it for a field check. We will, if we're doing any kind of physical inspection, we're getting out of the vehicle to come to you on your property, we are going to knock on your door first to try to see if someone's home to visit with you. If we have access to the backyard and we need to go back there, or a commercial property, we're going to go back there. A lot of commercial properties, maybe not on all businesses, somebody's already going to be there. But it's residences, you may be working when we come out. We will leave what we call a little door hanger to let you know why we were there. But there, and I know I went on beyond what you asked, but there is no fee for a field check. Just call our office and let us know that we need, and we'll come out. You need to let us know what's going on. And we will actually set up an appointment if the property owner is calling us, so that we work in your time frame of coming out there, so you can show us exactly what you want us to see.
Any other quick questions? Because I want her to be able to go home here. Any other quick questions for Deanna? Well, we might talk about property taxes a little bit more when you leave, but don't feel like you have to stay. You are free to go. Okay?
Yes, and I will let you know on the very back page is our phone number to our office. Anytime, feel free to call us if you have questions. We will get you the answers that you are asking for, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity, Commissioner
No
Howell,
problem.
and all of you, to come out and visit with you, to let you know we are real people and we do want to work with you too. So
I'd like to give her credit, because I think this is the first time in all my years of being on the county commission that an appraiser is willing to go out and meet with people in the district. That's crazy good, isn't it? Yeah. Thank you so much for doing that.
yeah, you're welcome.
And let me say also, again, the appraisers are maybe some of the most hated people in the county, and I don't think they deserve that. It'd be nice for us to be nice to them and recognize they're just doing their job, do the best of their ability. And, they're not the ones that created the laws. They're the ones that are just simply doing what they're told to do by a system that depends on good appraisals, if you will. One thing I was just mentioning, you can go ahead, again, you can go. I have asked Deanna for all of the data. Then the state does their sales ratio study. They don't necessarily look at every single sale, but I've asked her, I said, let's focus on residential. And I may be off on my numbers here. I think around 70% of our property tax revenue comes from residential properties. And of those residential properties, we have almost everybody who lives in a residential property is also a voter, right? So I hear people calling me up, they're mad about this. It's a voter that's talking about their home. That's almost all I talk about when I'm talking about property taxes. It's residential properties, and voters are upset about the system, if you will. So I asked Deanna for all of the data. So can you send me every home sale in Sedgwick County for the last year? And I've had this for the last 3 or 4 years. I've done this, and I plot on an XY plot, the graph, sales price versus appraised value. When they appraised those properties on January 1st, they had no idea they were going to sell this year. There's no way for them to. So you think I've got a sample, let's say of around 6,000 properties, let's just say 6,000 properties that sold last year, maybe more, maybe less, whatever. Those are 7,000 properties as a sample of all the properties. And you think about statistics, that's a pretty big sample of data to draw statistical conclusions from. That's a pretty big sample. And I do that plot, and I say, how do they compare? There's a few properties, I say a few, like way less than 1%, that I think are way off what I consider to be outside that 10% band. They're way off for some reason. They sold for way, way, way more than what they said they were worth. Or they sold for way, way, way less than what we said they were worth. In either case, it's an error that I like to say, what happened there? Maybe maybe a parent sold it to their kid. Maybe there's a reason why that number's off. We don't know. Which is why when you sell the house, one of the papers you fill out when you do the title transfer is a sales report, if you will. That goes to the appraiser. They put that in the database. That this house sold on that date for this price. That's a reportable that the title transfer people will fill that out and give that to them. And so they have that data. There's a few data, they have what's called a sales validation. They've got to go out there and they got to say, was this a reasonable price for this house or was it kind of an odd sale? If there's an odd thing like maybe it sold it to my son for half price, they would probably throw that one out. But if it's a normal buyer and seller sell it for what we both agreed to, I sell it for as high as I can sell it, he buys it for as least as I'm willing to go down. We both negotiate, come up with that market value. Imagine I have 6,000 of those, and I put this on a plot. About I can draw a line through all that data. On average, about 5% below market. On average, some of them are maybe quite a bit more than that. But if you look at the 6,000 properties, and I said that the average of those is 5% below market. At least we're close, but we're below, not over. We're actually below market on average. Then I can actually put an equation on there and say, on a random property, if you use that data and say there's the equation, based on what she thinks the value is, I can, with a fair amount of certainty, tell you what it's going to sell for. I got 6,000 pieces of property, basically back up that calculation. So it is actually a lot better than people realize. We all assume that everybody's a victim and everything's overvalued, and the reality is the data is actually pretty impressive. It's not as bad as people think it is. And so I like to give them credit and say that the data, the statistical data analysis actually proves that there are some errors, but for the most part, the vast majority of properties are pretty close to what they need to be. Now this year, I know you're about ready to walk out. We've had about 9,000 roughly appeals this year, and about 40% of those got an adjustment in their favor.
Right,
About 40%.
right.
So that's some numbers we should know, okay? And I'll talk about 2466 after you go.
That would be great.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Deanna. The legislature's tried to pass laws to, solve property tax frustration of the people. They didn't get much done, but they did pass one bill, I think surprised everybody. And this is House Bill 2466. Do you guys know about this? Anybody? House Bill 2466. I'll tell you all about it. Does anybody know about it? This is great. I'm glad you're here tonight. This is good. House Bill 2466 says that if you get an adjustment in your favor, you are capped at 5% growth per year for 5 years. You can't go more than 5% more in any 1 year for 5 years. Now you can get a 3% this year and 2% this year, whatever, but you can't go more than 5%. So one of the frustrations people say is, well, I was at, I got a 0% change last year, but the year before that I went up, 8% the year before that, and then the year before that it was at 2%, and then it went down 1%, but this year I got a 15% increase. It's almost like it's going up. It's like, what's going on? And one of the things I've talked about a lot is we need the appraisal system to be as accurate as possible. That really ought to be our goal. The legislature has tried to manipulate the appraisals as a way to solve this frustration of the people. But by doing that, they're actually moving away from a market value. They're not recognizing a market value. They're actually intentionally moving away from a market value. And so my opinion is they think they're solving a problem, but I can show you mathematically they're actually creating unfairness. They're actually raising taxes on people whose property values don't go up as quickly, their tax dollars are going up unfairly. And that's not good policy. The Senate especially put out a bill that would cap assessed value growth to 3% or less per year. I mean, you don't stress that, or less per year. Maximum of 3% is a constitutional amendment. That was a constitutional amendment. And during that hearing, I can tell you that at least one member of the House committee, when they were debating the Senate's bill, she said, I don't know what a mill levy is. Can someone please explain that to me? And she's on the Senate tax committee, on the House tax committee. My opinion is that they should be experts on tax. If they're going to be debating the constitutional amendment on how we do property taxes, that's not a question I want to hear from that member on that committee. Another member asked something that talked about, we don't know how to calculate taxes. Can someone please explain? I've got that form here, how to explain how to calculate taxes. I can go through this with you if you want to, but let me explain 2466. House Bill 2466 says, if you make an appeal, and I think what's going to happen next year is everybody's going to make an appeal. Why wouldn't they? We have the option to say that if we want to increase your value by more than 5%, we, the government, have to pay for a fee appraisal. We have to pay for a fee appraisal, and we're going to come into your property and see that it's worth more money than you think it's worth. My question to you would be, why would you let us into your house? Donna, you asked a very interesting question earlier. I would tell you, now that she's gone, I love Deanna dearly, but I would never let the appraiser into my home. You give them pictures. You show them what you want to show them. But if they walk in through your kitchen with granite countertops to see the crack in your basement, she's going to note there's granite countertops in there. That's what they do. So I would suggest if you really want to make an appeal to lower your property value, to lower your tax liability, then don't let the appraiser inside your home. You can show them with photographs, whatever you want to show them. That's my recommendation to my constituents. But House Bill 2466 says everybody's going to appeal their taxes next year. Why wouldn't you? Because any one year that you have that 15% increase or 25% increase or 12% increase or whatever that number is going to be, that will never happen to you again for the next 5 years. It can't. All you have to do is prove to them that you guys you overvalue my property this year by any amount. There's no threshold. They make an adjustment in your favor, you have a 5% cap every year for 5 years. That didn't even make the news as far as I know. Go ahead, Brett, you got a question?
Yeah, is that bill number right? That showed that sports authority did.
Are you looking at the enrolled bill, the gross bill, the one the governor signed? For 2026.
2026. You said,
No, House, it's in 2026 session. Make sure you're in the right year. Make sure you have the right number. Well, maybe I have the wrong number. I think it's, maybe I can look it up real quick while I'm talking to you, but I'll look it up real fast. But I believe it's 2466. Maybe I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, I apologize. I'll look it up while we talk. Anyway, that to me is a really major piece of legislation that passed. It's not the same as a 3% cap, but if you're addressing those spikes, everybody says, well, mine spiked, and you hear all the stories, you get this idea that everybody's property went up 20%. Because you have one guy who says, mine went up 20%. Well, maybe his did. It doesn't mean everybody else's did, but that narrative from that one person that said that, we all get this idea that everybody's went up. Well, let me just tell you, the average this last year, average increase was 9.1%. Until it gets said and done, the average increase was 9.1%. Why are accurate appraisals necessary? We are probably going to raise our mill levy, we're probably going to raise our tax, and get our terms right. Tax levy is how many dollars we take in. That's the tax levy for the government. It's an aggregate number. We have an aggregate assessed value for our jurisdiction. I'm using these terms very specifically because I'm very accurate in what I'm saying right now. The aggregate assessed value for my jurisdiction, for me, is all of Sedgwick County. What's the assessed value for every property added together? That's the aggregate assessed value for me. And so you have your individual property assessed value, and then you've got the aggregate. That's everything added together. In every jurisdiction, like City of Derby or the 259 or 260 schools, you have an aggregate number for your district, which you represent. Okay? Even though our assessed value growth went up on average, our aggregate assessed value growth this year was 9.1%. That's the number. So if I leave the mill levy alone, if we don't change anything with the mill levy rate, we're going to take in 9.1% more tax dollars. Our tax levy will grow by 9.1%. Well, I don't think that's fair. When consumer price index went up about 3 to 4%, we probably can't justify a 9% increase. Well, that would be, I consider it to be a tax hike. That would be unjustified increase in tax levy. That I don't know what you're going to do with all that extra money, because you can pay for what you paid for last year and have 9%, if you will, to cover the inflationary things. And what's inflation? You guys know inflation about energy and gasoline, and we'll talk about electricity, insurance costs, food for inmates, right? We talk about food for inmates. Rags to wipe the wheels down of the fire engines, for example. Everything has a price. And anything you can buy has the effect of has inflationary pressure on it. Everything, I think you can be aware, it's almost without exception, everything costs more than it did last year by some small amount. Everything. The average of all that is about 3 to 4%. Housing market may have gone up 9%, but housing market's not the same as inflation. Just because housing market went up 9% doesn't mean that the cost of food went up 9%. It went up 3 to 4%. So we can't justify a 9% capture. That's too much. The county right now is talking about a 4% increase in the tax levy. I don't know that that's the right number, but 4% means our employees, Denise, you work for the county. I think you're probably planning a 4% increase this year in your paycheck. 4% salary increase. Is that a fair amount? Well, inflation goes up 3 or 4%. They work there a whole other year. They give her a 4% increase. Do we celebrate that like it's a lot of money? Or is that like just keeping up with inflation? Right? A lot of people are saying, well, that seems like a really big raise. I wish that my Social Security would go up by 4%. Well, it typically does follow CPI pretty close. So Social Security does go up, and people like to deny this, but Larry, did Social Security go up this last year? What was it? Social Security, what was the increase this last year? Does anybody know? 3%? 4%? What'd you say? 8%. It was a big number. Okay. I really don't know because I don't get it yet right now, so I'm not paying attention to that right now. I just know it's not zero. Some people tell me it's zero, but that's not true. I've actually plotted this, all the raises of Social Security compared to things like other things in the county, and Social Security is actually keeping up with it pretty well. It's not zero, okay? It's something. I don't know what the number is, but it's something. But my point is this: if we give Denise a 4% raise, we've got to collect something more to make that raise possible, or we've got to find the money some other way, right? It's just like your budget. We have no choice, but we've got to somehow find the revenue to do whatever we plan to do this year. So we have a budget. You guys actually have a handout here. Does anybody have any questions on, let me find that bill number, Brett. Anybody have any questions on that bill before we move on? I'll find the number. 2644, thank you so much. Yes.
So historically, property taxes, that burden used to heavily be upon commercial and industrial.
Right.
And less on residential.
Right.
And now, due to tax incentives and all the abatements, everything that's happened, that has now flipped. The responsibility of property taxes are now resting on the burden of residents.
Right.
So I think the bigger issue now is how do municipalities, county governments, state governments now work towards flipping that back, because they don't have a profit margin that a business has. Residents have a very finite amount of money that comes in.
Does anybody subscribe to my newsletter by chance? A few of you do? Good. I wrote, Derby Informer was just here taking a picture a minute ago. Derby Informer, I had to write an op-ed a month ago, and I had to keep it to 400 words. But my real op-ed was 1,500 words. It's in my newsletter. It explains exactly what you're talking about. So if you don't have my newsletter yet, go look at my newsletter. It's available at sedgwickcounty.org, and you can see that newsletter. And there's a 1,500-word essay. It explains with precision exactly what's caused this to happen. The state of Kansas, and I'll tell you right now, every governor's candidate right now is saying we're not involved in the property tax business. It's a local government problem. We have nothing to do with it, but we are going to pass legislation to solve the problem. I'm speaking like I'm a governor's candidate right now, okay? There's several things wrong with what I just said. Number one, they caused the problem very definitively. They did numerous things back to back to back to back. It's actually raised the cost on residential property taxes very intentionally. They moved it away from commercial. Now, there's a theory out there that, businesses don't pay taxes. They'll just pass all those taxes on to their consumers, and it's the products that you buy. I understand the argument. I get that, right? They've lowered income taxes. They have actually increased sales taxes, right? And now there's an interest in lowering property taxes, especially on businesses, okay? And I say that in my newsletter on that op-ed, we've given up about $800 million in property tax revenue in the last 15 years or so. $800 million we've given up. Think about that. That's money we would have used to fund what we're doing now. There's a presumption by them, and I have actually asked. I wrote a letter to Speaker Dan Hawkins, and I wrote a letter to President Ty Masterson, because when they're out there talking, and they say, well, when we funded LAVTR, local ad valorem tax reduction, when we funded that, the local governments just wasted it. You ever heard them say that? Understand, we've got debt to pay off. We have deferred maintenance to take care of. We've got salaries that are struggling because we didn't give them a raise. There was a time from 2013 till about 2021, we almost didn't give our staff any raises at all. Almost none. Which is why in some departments we were like some departments we were like 40 to 50% understaffed in some departments. Our jail was so understaffed, our jail deputies were so understaffed, they actually talked about bringing in the National Guard. It was that bad. So we've captured some of the market growth in your homes to address some of these long-term languishing underfunding issues. We've addressed it. And now most of our staff is actually full staff. We have 911, they'll actually answer the phone now. EMS, they'll actually show up to your accident now. So emergency management now is ready to go. If they have a tornado, we have people ready to go. The jail is no longer understaffed. We don't actually have to call the National Guard any longer. And on it goes. We have fire trucks that are being replaced now. We have ambulances. We're buying more ambulances. And again, there's a lot of things we're doing today we couldn't even do 5 years ago. We didn't think we had the money. It was a decision we made not to raise the mill levy. We didn't raise the mill levy, so we just lived with it. Well, there's a lot of things that were piling up. We weren't getting to take care of some of the things. So when market value started going up, we captured some of that 3 or 4 years in a row, 2 or 3 years in a row, to address some of those deficiencies. So they say, well, we fund LAVTR, they just waste the money. I don't think I would call it waste. We're dealing with things that are not been taken care of for a while. And the history of LAVTR and the history of the City County Revenue Sharing Program, it's in my newsletter, the history of those two programs one was the excise taxes on alcohol and tobacco. The other one was enforcement revenue from tobacco and alcohol. So both those were related to the use of alcohol and tobacco. There was two sources of money that came into local government. The state of Kansas said, we don't want local governments charging those taxes anymore. We'll take it to the state level and we'll dole it back out to local government on a formula basis. That's what they said. Well, then actually, when the state got short on money, they just decided not to fund it anymore. And when they talked about, well, when we funded it, they just wasted the money. Where's their data? Where'd you get that from? They don't have any data. I've looked at the data. Trust me, it doesn't exist. So I wrote Ty Masterson and Dan Hawkins a letter saying, you say this, but where's your data to back up your comment? They didn't even answer the question. What that does, though, they justified them saying, well, we just need to not give them the money, but that's the better solution. You understand, though, when you don't fund LAVTR and City County Revenue Sharing Program, the shortage of that funding went right to property taxes. That's how we made it up. We had no choice. Property taxes covered the cost. And so we talk about $800 million, and one of the exemptions for businesses was a machine and equipment tax exemption. I think that was in 2008, I believe they passed that. And the other one was the mortgage registration fees. And that one alone was about $500 million we lost on mortgage registration fees because they took that fee away. Just, again, that was funding local government. So that's where the government used to get its funding. And then on top of that, the 16 unfunded mandates we have from the state of Kansas, they used to provide some revenue to fund those things, to run those things. They took 36%, I'm sorry, they added 36% cost to the operation of those 16 offices, and they reduced the funding by 4%. So it's a 40% swing to do with the state's mandates, a 40% swing as a consequence of them increasing the responsibilities and the costs and then lowering the funding from the state of Kansas. Those happened at the same time. So you add all that up, that's $800 million. Anyway, I do want to point out this sheet here I talked about budget a minute ago. We'll get to your question in just a second. There's a lot of information about budget packages here. We're in the budget season right now, and there's some things in here you might want. Go to the third page, at least. One of the things I want to point out here is emergency management total. Emergency medical services, there's 32 more FTEs, that's bodies. 32 more full-time equivalent paramedics and EMS personnel, and then other ambulances, 9 more ambulances. If we don't fund that, you're going to notice it, because right now you call 911, the ambulance may not be there as quickly as you like them. If you're having a heart attack, that may be a problem. And I know Larry and I care about that deeply, right? All right, Denise, you had a question.
With the LAVTR, how much money did we receive back?
It wasn't a lot. It was about $1 million per year, just that one program alone. About $1 million per year. $1 million is about $8 million. We have a countywide sales tax. This last year generated $149 million. Of that, we retained right at $41 million. The rest of it went to the cities. Derby received about $6.5 million of that countywide sales tax. And Larry, you probably know this, but what's $1 million generate in Derby now? I think it's about $250,000, about $300,000? $250,000? So you take that $6.5 million, divide that by 250, it's about 18 mils of property tax that Derby doesn't have to charge, because the county gives them enough money that Derby doesn't have to charge a property tax, because we give them the money through our countywide sales tax. And Wichita, if you live in Wichita, you add up the reduction for the county, which is about 5 mils, and reduction from the city, which is about 18 mils or so, I forget the exact number. Together, it's about 23 mils of property tax you're not paying in Wichita because of the countywide 1% sales tax.
Our Derby difference sales tax is keeping us from raising our taxes.
Right? But you actually have that Derby difference sales tax, but you also have the county. We provide $6.5 million to Derby through the countywide 1% sales tax. So you guys get two. You get your own and you get the county's. You get both of them. And together, actually take that back, just our sales tax, you're lowering the mill levy for Derby. Again, we're about 5 mils for the county and about 18 mils for the city. It's like 23 or 24 mils that Derby does not have to levy because of the countywide 1% sales tax. Then on top of that, the Derby difference sales tax makes it even more so. So there's another reason why Derby is lowering the mill levy rate, okay? So sales taxes has replaced property taxes somewhat. But why is that even necessary? Because the state of Kansas has reduced our funding from the state of Kansas. I'm hearing governor's candidates right now talking about, getting serious about property taxes. And by the way, I've got about a ton of things I'll bring up on property taxes if you have the time here. But they're also talking about lowering income tax rates again. So my question is, what's the priority of our state? Is it to lower property taxes or is it to lower income taxes? Because I'm not sure that you can do both at the same time. Okay. Do you guys, a couple things here. Did you guys see the handout that I gave you guys that shows? And Larry, you probably saw this, didn't you? Okay. Derby 260 is 57.635 mils total. That's the state, the 20 mils for the state, and the local school board. I know Kathy on the local school board. So that's that one. So you see some school district stuff there. You see that in Sedgwick County government, we have Derby is 45.498 mils. You see that? That's the city taxes. You see Sedgwick County taxes? We're at 28.701. Every county around us, the county taxes are significantly higher.
I have a question on
Yeah.
Derby School. Does that include the web commission amount?
I don't know. I think it does, actually. I think it does, which is about 7.5 mils for the rec commission. Okay? But anyway, I guess my point is, just looking at this, I would love to lower our mill levy rate, and I think we can some. In fact, I think we will this year. Probably lower our mill levy rate again this year by maybe close to a mil. Okay, this year. But we're already the lowest in the area. I don't think we're the problem. Go ahead.
I just fact checked myself. You're actually on 360. It's one down there, you're right.
360? Thank you. I should have that data here. In fact, I usually have that data with me, but I didn't bring it tonight. But $360,000 is 1 mil. So if you again divide that 6.5 mils by $6.5 million by 350, what's that come to, Ken?
Oh, not that fast.
It's about 18 mils. Then you have the 5 mils reduction from the county, because we have $41 million. We're also keeping out of that 149 million. We keep 41. So there's about $8 million per mil for the county. That's about 5 mils for the county. We're not charging. So if we add the 5 and the 18 together, that's 23 mils. We're not charging Derbyites in property taxes because of the countywide 1% sales tax. Okay? Okay, I've got a whole list of things we can talk about. Before I do that, I'll go to questions, and if you guys don't have questions, I'll just keep talking. What questions you guys have you want to chat about? Go ahead.
Did you vote against the hangar?
Absolutely, I did. I posted about that today. You guys didn't see the news today. There is a proposal that we would move the Kansas Highway Patrol from Cook Airfield to Jabara. And right now, Highway Patrol is in some buildings that there's this kind of a longer story. I don't have to explain the whole story unless you're interested in this, but Cook Airfield built some hangars for a drone school that the state of Kansas changed their opinion on it after they built the buildings. So to make lemonade out of that, eventually they got a Kansas Highway Patrol contract. There's at least 2 airplanes or 2 aircraft out there. Sometimes there's as many as 4 or 5 airplanes out there at Cook Airfield in this Highway Patrol hangar. They're charging them $59,000 a year for that hangar space. $59,000 a year is the price. And the Highway Patrol wanted to go to Jabara instead. So the state's cost for them to be leasing a building that's 21,000 square feet, a brand new hangar, which we're going to build at Jabara, is going to cost the state $650,000 a year. That's just about almost 11 times more money. But on top of that, we don't have a contract with the state of Kansas. They will not give us a commitment for 20 years. But we've got to sign a bond for 20 years to pay our payments. And then also, we have a sheriff's plane we do extraditions with. And we're paying $30,000 a year for our hangar space out at Jabara. We could get less expensive hangar space at Cook if we wanted to do that. But that's never actually been, I just found out about that this afternoon, by the way. We're paying $30,000 a year for our hangar space at Jabara. So if you take that into account, and they say they're going to give us free mechanic, so we don't have to pay for a mechanic anymore, take all that into account, we're still going to spend about $1.4 million more of your money over what it would cost us today. So if the state pays us the money, which I'm not sure they will, and we get a free mechanic, and we reduce the cost of our lease to get this new building, we put our airplane in their hangar, or the new hangar, all said and done, it's still going to cost Sedgwick County taxpayers about $1.4 million. But that's really assuming a lot of good things. Insurance cost goes up, that price will go up. If utilities goes up, that price will go up. If operations of that building goes up, or there's maintenance issues in that building, well, you got to pay for that too. And then you add in things like the fact is if they replace their mechanic and their mechanic can't work on our airplane, then we have to actually pay for our own mechanic in a different way. So that $82,000 for a mechanic potentially will change. So if you add that up, it's very likely to be more than $3 million, maybe $3.5 million over 20 years, our cost. And that's assuming they still make the $650,000 payments every year for the next 20 years. They could back out of that too, because we have no actual contract with them to ensure that they will actually keep their word on that. 4-1.
It passed.
What was the good part of it? You haven't said anything that sounded good to
Well, the good part of it, if I was going to try to sell it, from my colleague's perspective, is we have a sheriff that wants to be good partners with the Highway Patrol. And the Highway Patrol is investing a lot of millions of dollars into Sedgwick County for patrol support, if you will. They have a helicopter and a plane that they provide some services to this region, but especially for Wichita and Sedgwick County. And I appreciate their investment here. The reality is, though, this hangar has nothing to do with that. What I just described, they'll be here no matter what we do. They're here. And we have the largest city in the state of Kansas. We have the second most populous county in the state of Kansas. We have the highest crime rates in the state of Kansas. Highway Patrol is going to be here because that's what they do. So this decision doesn't change that at all. It also doesn't change response times. In fact, I found out this afternoon that response times might actually be less at Cook than it would be at Jabara. I thought it was going to be the same. There was early on, I was under the presumption it would be faster at Jabara and longer at Cook. And now I'm finding out from this meeting today, they're basically the same response time. And I'll find out later today that actually Cook might be faster than Jabara for a couple of reasons. So we want to be friends with Highway Patrol. I can't think of any other good reasons.
They're building their headquarters out at Jabara?
No, they just.
Who's building, there's a reason why they want Jabara.
Well, WATC is building another building at the airport out there. WATC is building a hangar.
What does that have to do with it?
That has nothing to do with it. But the Highway Patrol just leased brand new offices at the old Renta Center building at 37th Street North and Rock Road. Remember the old Thorn building, this mirrored building? Highway Patrol's in that building now. And so you think of it from the leadership of the Highway Patrol, they would like to be able to go a mile away and see their hangar and their airplanes and maybe talk to their pilots. And so there's close proximity to them, at least the leadership, they think that's a good thing. Although I don't think that's what the pilots think. The pilots probably would rather be at Cook.
Who's making the money?
Who's making the money? Well, the people who are going to, we're going to build a hangar, and it's going to cost, by the way, you add in the bond, the principal payments and the interest on the principal payments for the bond, it's about just under $14 million, or it's $14.5 million over 20 years. It's what we have to pay for. And on top of that, that's included in that. What's that?
Let's probably staying up there.
There's nothing wrong with it. They just don't want to. They just don't want to. There's nothing wrong with it. They just don't want to.
So you're telling me
It'd be cheaper.
1/11 of the cost. Less than 10%. About 10% of the cost. 9% of the cost.
so I can go work on those airplanes and you guys will pay me?
If you're certified to do so and get a job over there. Now I'll just say, on top of that, the airport authority, the Wichita Airport Authority, which owns the land around Jabara and Eisenhower, they can't build this without a long-term lease with the airport authority. And so we're going to have to sign a 50-year lease with the airport authority. They're giving us a deal, they say, it's half price. It's still $22,000 a year for 50 years. So
What's the common sense with this, Jim?
I don't know. I voted against it. I can't tell you why they did it.
I bet you if you have an investigation, somebody'd go to jail.
I think it's legal. I don't think no one's did anything illegal or unethical. It's just a policy choice, and I disagree with it. I voted no. I said no, but it passed 4-1. What's that?
You said pass 4-1?
4-1 today. Yes.
What's going on with the data centers at Sedgwick County?
Data centers. I knew this was probably going to come up at some point. We are in the process of trying to develop regulations that will govern how data centers come to Sedgwick County, if they can come here at all. By the way, let's talk about the word data centers. The word data center is a very generic term. We already have a lot of data centers in Sedgwick County. Boeing has one. Sedgwick County has one. WSU has one. You're talking about the hyperscale. The big ones, the really big ones. Yeah.
Coming in that are buying up
farmland.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about.
I do know. So this is called hyperscale data centers. That's how they refer to those, okay? So let me just say up front, legally, I can't tell you how I'm going to vote on that.
Okay.
I can't tell you that, but
We're giving companies like these big companies, why are we giving them deals to come into our county?
well, again, so let's talk about the state of Kansas. The state of Kansas, back in 2008, they did what's called a machine and equipment tax exemption. So everything inside that building cannot be taxed. That was a law they passed a long time ago, 20 years ago. But then in 2 years ago, they passed Senate Bill 98. Senate Bill 98 said, as long as they have at least 20 jobs, 20, they can get a 100%, 10-year, or is it 20-year? Sales tax, it's 20 years. Sales tax exemption on everything that they purchase to construct the building or to populate the inside of the building. Everything they purchase will be exempt from sales taxes for the next 20 years.
Did Ty push that through?
I know he did vote for it, yeah. I don't know if he pushed it through, but he did support it. So, they could have said, we're going to exempt them from state sales tax and we'll let the local sales tax be applied. They could have said that, but they didn't say that. So all we can tax, if we tax anything at all we can tax on them would be the building itself. Let's just say for crazy, let's say it's $1 billion building. That'd be a lot of money, right? $1 billion. That would add 0.05%. Less than that, less like 0.045% to our aggregate assessed value of Sedgwick County. What I'm saying by that is the tax value, you won't even notice it. If we did that, if we say we tax the building, you might see literally pennies on your tax bill as a reduction in your tax bill. But if I go up and say $30 and I go down 50 cents, what do you know? All you saw is that my tax bill went up by almost $30, right? You didn't even realize that 50 cents even happened. So the effect of the tax cut to you is almost negligible. There's no real tax value for the county to do this. So that's not a motivation for the politicians or the government leaders, not in Sedgwick County. Now, if they did the same thing in another city, and they went to a county let's say Harper County, and did the same thing, their tax value in that county is really low, okay? It's almost all agricultural. And so $1 billion building in that county would make a big difference. But Sedgwick County has $220 billion worth of assessed value in Sedgwick County. How do I know that? Because we know that we collect about, I take that back, excuse me. I said that wrong, I apologize. We have $8 billion, I was way off, excuse me, I made a mistake. We have $8 billion of assessed value in Sedgwick County. How do I know that? Because one mill levy generates 1,000th of that. That's $8 million of property taxes for $8 billion worth of assessed value. Again, that's the aggregate number. So if you have a $1 billion commercial building, okay, the $1 billion commercial building, 25% of that will be taxed as a commercial building. So 25% of a commercial building, that'd be $250 million worth of assessed value. And again, when we're talking about $8 billion worth of aggregate assessed value, that $250 million is a drop in the bucket. Again, it's not going to make a big difference to your taxes. It just won't. You will not see it in your tax bill. So this is really not a reason for us to go forward. Let me just say this. I get a lot of email on this, on data centers.
I'm sure you do.
I do. I get an email every single day on data centers. Almost all of it is people opposed, okay? So that, and they're concerned about a lot of the same things. They're concerned about water consumption. I'm sure you've heard about that. They're concerned about utility rates. We'll let the data center go in, they're going to make a lot of money, and my electric rates are going to go up because they're here, right? So I am confident of one thing, that those two things will not happen in Sedgwick County.
The electricity that they use, they should produce it themselves.
Right.
So it wouldn't affect anything.
Well, here's the thing, though. Let me explain. Kansas actually has a surplus we export electricity all the time. We generate more electricity than we can possibly ever use here.
Why their electric bill's so damn high?
Because that's a good question for the KCC. But let me just say this, there's a fifth tier of energy rates. They're going to pay a higher tier than anybody else in the state of Kansas. So much so that by them paying a higher tier, it is the way that's absorbed for all of the customers is our rates may not go down, but they're not going to go up as fast. In other words, I'm not going to tell you, it's like your taxes. Your taxes aren't going to go down. If we can do something like cutting the budget or whatever, your taxes won't go up as fast, right? That's a better way to look at that. If we do a good job of making them pay that fifth tier of energy rates, that means your electric rates won't go down, but your electric rates won't go up as much as they would have gone up.
The way I see it here, they have a surplus in electricity, we're selling it too cheap.
Well, yeah, and the data centers are paying the highest a new rate for just for them that's higher than anybody else in the state of Kansas. Okay, so if I told you that your electric rates will not go up because of them, in fact, your electric rates might not go up as much as they would have gone up without them. Does that make sense? Did they say that where it makes sense? What's that?
It should go down.
They're not going to go down. They say without them there, it's going to go up here and then here and here. But with them there, it goes up at a lower rate.
The reason why they won't go down is somebody's making money. That's all it is to do.
Well, yeah, they're a business. They're going to make money. All right, that's what they do. That's why they're doing it. They're a business.
Now, Jim, I know legally you can't say how you're going to vote, but I know there's some people, betting on how all 5 of you are going to vote.
Oh, really?
I sent a video to you on that.
I didn't see that. I'd like to see that video again. But anyway, just say this. Today we decided to pass a new moratorium on solar regulations. Did you know about that? That happened today. And I can tell you right now, I'm the only commissioner that voted against them the first 2 times they came across our bench. I've already voted against them twice because they weren't sufficient. They were not ready to go. And I had problems with the solar regulations. So I did vote today to do a new, I hate to use the word moratorium, it's called interim control, development control something. I always forget the name of that. Anyway, it means the same thing as a moratorium, but moratorium might be interpreted as like we're just not going to do it ever. What this means is it gives us time to go fix regulations so that they come back in. The regulations are more protective to people, okay? So I did vote for that today. But I've not voted for the solar regulations. I also voted to ban wind energy and the wind turbine generators, the electricity, they're not allowed in Sedgwick County. I did vote to ban them in Sedgwick County. So that's my record so far. And we have 2 solar applications that are coming before us for consideration. Those applications will not be impacted by this moratorium. The moratorium is for anything that happens after those 2. So it starts today. We can't take any new applications as of right now, but we have 2 that are being processed right now. That will not change those 2. It may change what happens after that.
Why can't we get these panels on parking garages, on buildings? Why can't
Well,
they leave our
sure.
farmland and our...
So the answer to that question is that, every parking garage is a little bit different. A roof is a little bit different. It gets extremely complex. There's going to be 600,000 panels in one spot. To replace that with a building or whatever, you're not going to get to the scale. This is called a utility scale solar farm. So if you do parking garages and parking lots and rooftops and things like that, you're not going to get the scale, and it gets a lot more complex because they're installed in a very efficient manner to collect up the array, if you will, and then convert that to a matching power, to match the power grid, because they get injected into the power grid. To do that in other locations, in all over the city or whatever, it's just not. You're not going to get to that scale.
What about all over the state? Why can't we spread them?
Well, they may be all over the state at some point. So just so you know, there are.
I mean, all over the state, like in buildings, and
There just isn't a way to compare the same scale. Again, talking 600,000 solar panels for this one spot. Yes.
Where's that energy going? Is it staying here in Kansas?
No, it's like I liken this to banking. Okay, when you put $1 in the bank, where does that dollar go? it's in the system, and you pull that dollar back out anywhere in the country. It's not the same dollar, but it has the same value. So when they put that electricity on the grid, it's like if you plug a hairdryer in your garage versus a hairdryer in your basement, it's plugged into the same system, so to speak. Thank you, Jim. You're welcome. Thank you for coming, both of you. Where it's generated and where it's consumed, it doesn't really matter. As long as it goes on the grid somewhere and it's taken off the grid somewhere else, it's not the same. I mean,
What I'm saying is, if we're building these panels, and let's say we put them in Sedgwick County, and 90% of that energy is going to Oklahoma, then Oklahoma needs to have the panels, not us. That's how I look at it.
Okay. And I'll just throw this out there again. Please don't read into this comment, but I want to just balance the conversation out here. How many people in this room would say, you stand for property rights? We all say that pretty much. You're not raising your hands here, but can I tell you, I'm pretty sure that you all would say, yes, I stand for property rights. And the only thing that's, negative on this in a way is you can see them. If that's all, that's really it. They're there, you can see them. Someone used their property for something that they wanted to do on their property, and it doesn't really bother me in any way, except for I know it's there. Okay? In a way, there's an argument. What's that? In a way, you could argue that they have the right. Now, I might just say, I don't believe
What about their neighbor that lives right next door?
they can see them, but it's not hurting them in any way. I'm just being devil's advocate for just a second here. Bear in mind, I voted against the regulations, okay? So keep that in mind here. But if I was to play devil's advocate, I would simply say that the neighbor has to drive by them, but the guy that's got the panels on his property is making a lot of money, and he's very happy. And the people who own the panels that put the project in there, they're making a lot of money, and they're also very happy. Because people are using their land the way they want to use their land. And the guy that's driving by that has to look at it. And he's not going to benefit personally, perhaps, but it's also not hurting him in any way. So yeah, in terms of property rights, if I do something on my property that you don't want me to use my property the way I want to use my property, you might just say, it's my property. I get to make the choice of what I do on my property. You all know there's a field behind my house, right? I would just keep it a field. I love that field. But if that guy decides to sell it to a developer and they build houses, what's my choice? It's not my property to say, I don't want to look at houses, I want to look at the field. I don't own that property. It's their right to do what they want to do with it. So I can't stop them. My choice right now is I could go buy that property, then I can make all the choices I want. I don't have the money to buy that property, so I guess I'm not going to do that. Right? But that is my option. So these farmers that are making a lot of money, they are choosing to use their land this way.
Well, I heard on Sunday that Kansas is the third largest state behind Nebraska and Texas for cattle, for beef.
We have 6 million cattle in the state.
So if we're going to continue to do this with our land, then we're not going to be the third largest. I mean, if we continue to...
All of the cattle are out there in the western Kansas and pens.
But if we continue to do this because we're talking about hyperscale data centers out in western Kansas, or talking about, I'm just saying.
Yeah. I would say that the solar panel farms, we're talking about, 3,000 acres potentially, right? But the data centers, we're talking fairly small, we're talking a couple hundred acres.
Now,
right?
I mean, and until somebody else wants to.
Yeah. But again, I'll argue that I don't think we're a starving country. We're not without food. We have plenty of food. We could produce more. They choose not to because commodity prices go down when you overproduce. And that's why our country actually even pays farmers sometimes not to farm some things. They don't want the commodity prices going too low. I feel sorry for farmers because they have a bumper crop this year, so did everybody else. And commodity prices go down because there's abundance of things to sell on the commodities market. Next year, they have a bad year, there's no rain, and they have a drought, and they almost produce nothing. The commodity prices go through the roof, but they have nothing to sell. Now, they say, I can use my property, and I can actually make a lot of money without having to worry about the weather and all that stuff. I can use my property another way, and it's life-changing. If they own the property, and they can generationally change their family forever with an opportunity that they want that property. And I'm allowed to tell them no. We can tell them no. But it comes back to it's a property rights issue. A lot of Republicans will say we like to defend property rights, even if it's something I don't personally agree with. I don't like it, but we support property rights enough that says I think it's maybe even stupid. I wish they wouldn't do that, but I support the right to do it. That's a kind of Republican value. We don't like to overregulate things. Democrats, in my opinion, overregulate a lot of things. And one of my things I try to do is reduce regulations everywhere. So when you put that in context of this, we're fighting for more regulations and telling people they can't use their property. It's really awkward, is it not?
You said 3,000 acres, that's for one?
That's two solar panel farms, 1,500 acres each.
So, I mean, ultimately, 640 acres is a mile by a mile square so you're talking about almost 5 square miles.
I believe they said that I'm not a farmer, please tell me what's the section of land, is that a square mile?
642,
Okay.
is it?
They're allowed to have up to 6 sections per project, and they have to be at least 2 miles apart from each other.
That's huge.
I understand that, it is huge. Yeah, go ahead.
Jim, tell everybody what happens to our corn grown in the state.
Well, a lot of the corn in the state is irrigated, and they do use a lot of water to irrigate corn. And the corn then is used to reduce the price of gas because they put it in ethanol. So we're using water to lower the price of gas.
So maybe we should grow something besides corn?
But again, the farmers they'll grow what they can sell that makes them the most money. And we don't tell farmers what to grow. They have the sovereignty to choose what they want to. They make the best decisions on how to stay in business and make the most profit. I don't blame them. But there is a market for ethanol, and we're allowing them to use massive amounts of water to essentially grow the corn that creates the ethanol that lowers the gas price.
And the rest of it goes out west to the feedlots to feed the cow. We don't eat any.
We don't really produce a lot of sweet corn that we eat on the table. It's all feed corn and ethanol corn or whatever. So it is 8 o'clock. I didn't mean to end so quickly. I appreciate you guys being here tonight. Ma'am, I don't know your name on the back. What's your name? Sarah Beecham. Sarah Beecham, thank you for being here. You what's that?
Derby and Harmon.
Oh, thank you for being here today. Appreciate you. Sir, what's your name? James. That's what, Hanford? Thank you so much. I thought that was your name. I think I know everybody else here, so I want to say just thank you for your attendance. Hope it's been interesting to you. We'll do another one of these, I think in October, I believe. I just appreciate your time. There's about a million things I could talk about right now. I got a long list of things we did not talk about. But please understand on the issue of solar panels and data farms, solar projects and data centers, I'm not allowed to share a definitive answer on what I'm going to do because I'm not legally allowed to have an opinion yet. I'm just listening and learning, and I can actually argue both sides of this because I understand both sides. And you appear to be on one side, so I'm arguing against and giving you devil's advocate arguments to make you understand. So it doesn't mean I'm going to vote any particular way.
Windmills in Sedgwick County.
We don't allow them in Sedgwick County.
Have you ever? We go see our daughter at Hayes and take 7.
They're everywhere, aren't
They're
they?
hideous.
Yeah.
And you can see the oil and rusting crap.
Brett, would you have a
coming
question?
down. They say they're the cleanest, most wonderful thing in the
Well,
world. Don't know.
that's an opinion.
I think it's a load of crap. They're all
3
falling
big
apart,
huge
but it's,
houses.
yeah,
Like there all the time.
we're trying to fix them and everything.
Brett?
Yeah, so you don't hear about it much in Sedgwick County, but why would a person in your position sign an NDA?
Why would they sign an NDA?
Yeah, can you?
As far as I know, no one's ever signed an NDA.
No, I'm not talking about Sedgwick, but I'm talking about in other places it's happened, but why would a
A
person?
county commissioner signed an NDA?
Yeah, commissioners or city councils or anything like that.
I've never heard of that before, but NDA means that you have secret information. We have to live in a transparent world, and I can tell you right now, there's a lot of, I'd have a lot of concerns about someone telling me something I can't disclose publicly. If you don't want me talking about it, don't tell me, because I don't want to be that way. I talk to people about everything, so, and I would never sign an NDA. Just letting you know.
So you were saying that you voted no for the windmills in Sedgwick County?
I did.
But didn't that go against people's property rights?
You could argue, yeah. There was not a single person advocating for them, however. We didn't have anybody asking for them.
Still, if a farmer wanted to use it, but see, I'm
That's
just
true.
arguing what you were arguing before, just the other way.
So you're going to find inconsistencies in my arguments?
No, I'm just saying.
Okay.
The birds.
It's a very difficult issue, is it not? It is very difficult.
is.
Okay.
Me personally, I think the hyperscale data centers are going to be used against us.
Okay. I would, and now we'll try to wrap this up here. I think the hyperscale data centers are going to be somewhere. They're not going to happen. They're going to be happening. I think there are some counties to the south here. I think Sumner County may be one of them. They're going to welcome them in because of the tax revenue is so big to them. They actually do want them. There are some cities around Wichita, outside Sedgwick County, that are actually looking forward to luring them in because they want that tax revenue.
And that's fine, they can go
But
there.
But they are going to happen somewhere.
Yeah, surveillance and control is what.
So here's the way I say this is, listen, I'll try to wrap this up. The data centers, in my opinion, are not going to use massive amounts of water. They're going to cause your electric rates to maybe be less than they would have been. There may be some tax revenue to lower your property taxes a little bit. There may be 250 people working there that make $100,000 apiece. They're going to have income taxes and sales taxes from they're also going to pay real estate taxes when they buy a house. So there's some tax revenue through the employment, okay, that might happen. There's also taxes through the construction jobs that will be created. And I've been told that a large data center like that may be continuously under construction for the next decade or two. They're that big that they could be under construction for a very, very long time. On top of that, I would say if they're not using any water, the electric rates go down, they create the jobs, there's zero chance for toxic stuff in the ground. You drive by, it looks like a corporate building. You can't hear it. Let's just say there's no noise. I don't know at that point why people are necessarily opposed to it necessarily, okay? Those are a lot of what ifs. I'm not saying all that's going to happen that
So
way.
if they're not using water, how are they using it to cool it?
There's new
fan?
technology that
A
they
fan,
will
not
not.
a fan?
They will have fans probably, but they may
Tell me I'm not
have
gonna hear a fan?
they may have closed loop systems that has water in the system that circulates the water, but there's no consumption of water, like your car.
Well, even the closed loop systems, I heard that are using about the amount of a large swimming pool, backyard swimming pool.
If they have evaporative cooling, they might, but there's no evaporative cooling. It's just
Those companies, you figure, usually most of those companies are gonna go to the lowest bidder.
Okay.
And they're gonna,
So there's different kinds of technology. Evaporative cooling could be it, but it could also be just radiators with fans. So there's a way to do this without, again, you charge the system with water, but there's no consumption of water on a daily basis. And so imagine, and I'm just saying, what if all those things were true, would you still be opposed? Now, I'm just saying, you have to understand that it's just a business with a building, paying taxes, it has employees, it's just a big building. And all the things that people are worried about, the electric rates, if that's not an issue, the water thing's not an issue, there's actually more jobs, there's paying property taxes, they create, income taxes and sales taxes and all the taxes paid by employees are being paid. If all that is true, I'm having trouble wondering what exactly is the negative, other than you have to drive by it, once again. So
Surveillance and control eventually, Jim.
well, those are all going to happen whether it happens here or not. Okay. That doesn't change the fact that that can happen. The technology is going to happen regardless. The question is, where is it going to happen? Do you want to have those jobs in your community or in some other county? That's the question. And again, please don't assume I'm in favor of anything, because I'm not. I was saying that there is an argument to be made that all those things might not be correctly stated. There may be arguments against every one of them. There's actually answers that says it's just a building with a bunch of people working in it that pays taxes and they do what they do. There's not, again, we have data centers today and no one says a thing about it. They're just not hyperscale. Okay. I use AI virtually every single day for something.
I know you do.
I should show you my latest data. Okay. It's amazing. All right, guys, thank you for your time. Appreciate it very, very much.